Good evening, everyone. My name is Rudy Page, and welcome once again to a chapter in my life and book. This week it's Steve Stephenson, and of course, this initiative is in collaboration with Ealing Libraries. Good evening, Nicholas. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very proud to be part of this initiative, and thank you for inviting us and having us involved in something so amazing, and also getting the opportunity to meet somebody who's really and truly changed this country for the better. So
Great.
thank you for having me along.
Thanks a lot, and we'll be hearing a lot more from you a bit later on. Good evening to our guests on the panel. Good old friend of mine, not so much to the old, but Trevor, good to see you. We'll be hearing from you a bit later on. Steve, how are you?
I'm fine. Good evening to you all.
Good, great. So, Steve, before we get into the dialogue, you've got a long list of achievements. I would just like to share with everybody before we go over to Nicholas for the first question. So, in part of your biog, you're former director of the Race Equality and Human Rights Service in Bristol, and you've done a lot of pioneering work in community development. You've worked in local government for over 40 years, and your skills and support have taken you across Bedford, Luton, Birmingham, Northampton, Swindon, as well as being throughout the Caribbean. Been married for over 40 years with 2 daughters. You're former Principal Equalities Officer for Swindon Borough Council, former chair of Swindon's Race Hate Crime Forum. You're born in Jamaica, in Kingston, on Human Rights Day, I see, the 10th of December. That means you were destined to do this type of work then. You're also former director of Milton Keynes Racial Equality Council. And, you did a lot of work in actually saving that organization from closure. And we'll talk about that. You've done also principal officer as it relates to ethnic minorities in Northamptonshire Social Services. You've worked closely with colleagues in the Home Office in terms of grant support for communities. You've got, which is the area that I'm always interested, a proven level of experience or track record of experience in policy development and implementation around race equality. And you've done a lot of work in helping to bring African, Caribbean, Asian, and all communities together after some of the challenges in Luton. And you're a big name when it comes to supporting community football, cricket, so sports lover, and obviously utilizing sport as a means for community development, community cohesion. And so that's that, and there are many other tributes, but we'll come to that a bit later. So first, just like Nicholas to start us off today.
Sure. So you opened the Starlight YC in Luton with your own money in June 1980. What was your motivation, and what was happening to young people at that time that drove you to do that?
So YC being the youth club, Starlight Youth Club.
Yes, I was actually on the management committee of the Starlight Youth Club in about 1975, when we actually started teaching Black history. We actually started teaching Black history in 1976, long before the official day for Black history in London, which is October 1987. And we had a situation where the club was closed down, the keys were thrown away, and I had to lobby. I lobbied with several people. I remember someone called Valerie Taylor and Curler Bruce and Mr. Bruce, and we fought, and we got the club reopened. But when the club was reopened, we got a shell of a club. So I took money from my own pocket and reopened the club. There was a gentleman called Carl Campbell, who was a student, a law student at Middlesex University. He paid £22 and he lent me £10, and we bought the first set of equipment. But what I would like to say is that this period coincided with me starting my social work career at Steel Polytechnic. And just coincidentally, Black youth unemployment. And I was saying to myself, how is it that we have a group of youngsters that was born here in the mid-60s? How did they come to be at the bottom of the pile in British society? At the time, we were talking about Black youth being alienated. They were marginalized. They weren't part of the mainstream of British society. This coincided with also Bob Marley coming to the UK in about 71 at the Rainbow. And there was an issue around Black youth and identity. But more importantly, what triggered a lot of this work was Bernard Cord, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Grenada, wrote a pamphlet called How the West Indian Child Was Made Educationally Subnormal in the British School System. And what Cord was saying was the fact that these children were ashamed to be Black. They were told that they didn't have a history. They were put down because a lot of them spoke broken English at the time when they came from the Caribbean. So what we did was start one of the first supplementary schools outside London called the One Foundation Organization. And that's where it started, with me teaching Black history, Black American history, Caribbean history, and African history. My friend teaching math, other people teaching English. That's where we started.
Do you also feel that youth clubs could be used in a very similar way to bringing communities together now? Because we're seeing dysfunction in society at times. Do you think that the youth clubs could have the same results if they were re-implemented back into communities across the country?
Yes, I think they should, because we have got to this period where it's 40 years since the New Cross murders and that famous saying, 13 dead, nothing said. Some of them same youngsters actually used to come to the Starlight Youth Club, because what happened to the Starlight? We had the building, we had the space. At the time, the London South System, they were telling me that they didn't have any space in London. And I won't go into it now, but there's a story of the way Sir Cox and Fat Man, they actually saved the club from closure. But I will leave that bit out. But in terms of the fact that we have this situation with the stabbings and so on, and the crimes in London, the so-called black and black crimes. I don't like the term black and black crimes, because you notice we never say white and white crimes.
Yeah.
When white boys in Cornwall or Devon, get into fights like that. So I think it would be very useful to actually return to the youth service. I know the youth service is not statutory as social services, and there's a lack of funding, but I strongly believe that having a strong youth service is very good. Also, I have used sports, as a means for change, mostly cricket and football. And I think it's very, very important. Although, my main focus with young people is always around plan A, which is education, and plan B, sport. But I think it's very relevant. And, I think the government should really think about bringing back the youth clubs.
Yeah, and in fact, what you did really, which is never changing, because we all say with regards to young people. So young people need somewhere to go. Young people need something to do. Young people need someone to show them how. And it doesn't matter what their background, what their status is. So if you've got young people with nowhere to go, then, you know, it's going to be obvious in terms of the social cohesive development within their neighborhood. So that was excellent work there.
Can I just add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we mentioned about knife crimes. I was saying to someone recently, there was 3 situations in Luton. 2 guys, black guys, fighting in a pub in the town. 2 other guys having a fight somewhere else, and 2 others. 3 situations in Luton where I think if I wasn't around, there would have been a death. But I'll just give you one example. One boy from my club went to prison. His friend started sleeping with his girlfriend. He threatened to kill him. And he got a knife when he came out of prison. And I heard he was in this area. And I went into the area and I said to him, give me the knife. And he only gave me the knife. And he still insists he's gonna kill this guy. And the way I stopped him was I said, tell everybody that Mr. Stephenson from Starlight told you not to do it. And because I told him that, he could go around and keep his street cred. But I believe if I wasn't around, one of those would have been a murder charge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the courage to intervene. Right, we're going to move on a bit now. Sport and cricket, which we know that you love. Now, your book is called Unbeaten Innings, and you're reflecting cricket and your fight for race equality and human rights over the last 40 years, as we've touched on already. So tell us, Steve, Unbeaten Innings, just give us the background to the title of your book. And there's a picture with yourself and Clyde Lloyd, but we'll come to Clive Lloyd a bit later. But for the moment, tell us the story in that title.
It has a double meaning. Unbeaten has a double meaning. The first is that when a batsman gets to 100 not out, it's called an unbeaten inning.
Okay. And
secondly, I've worked as a senior social worker in child protection in local government. I also work as an equalities officer, which are 2 of the most demanding and challenging jobs in local government. Because when you work as an equalities officer, especially around race, you are sometimes welcome as a person, but the role you are playing, you are not usually welcome. And there's always a culture of resistance against the work that you are doing.
I know the feeling.
So I'm saying that I'm 40 years unbeaten.
Yes.
Still have several race discrimination cases, immigration cases, and Windrush cases that I am supporting at the moment. But I won't speak about them because they are confidential.
Cool. Excellent. So, as I said, on the front cover of your book, there's a picture with you with Clive Lloyd. So I just really want to spend the next few minutes, and Nicholas Trevor also could come in here. And I really want to talk about leadership and that whole collective, collaborative approach to team leadership, which 20, maybe 30 years ago, that the West Indies through the cricket team really exemplified that. So I just want to hear from you, just some of your thoughts about that leadership quality that Clive Lloyd had, and what were the key things that you observed?
Well, I just want to say, I asked Clive if I could use the photo, because we actually umpired a match in Romford in 2019. It was actually Rudolph Walker from EastEnders. It was his charity match. Mm-hmm. I asked Clive, and Clive was also the first person in about 87 that let me into the West Indies changing room to collect autographs, autograph bats, and we raised a lot of money at the time from that. But one thing I'd just like to say, before we talk about leadership, I was told when I entered that training room that everything I saw in there is confidential, and that I don't repeat what I've seen. And I've kept that for the last 40 years because I've been in their changing room on the new, on the older. So I've always kept that. In terms of leadership, Clive exemplified real leadership. And I don't know if you noticed that he actually wrote to the West Indies cricketers in Bangladesh and told them that they should take their chances. And I know our third 11 lost the one day, but you can see that we're made it up back in the test. So Clive has always been like one of our positive role models. He's a man that understands our community. I've been to his house in Cheshire when he was living there. I actually bought Dean Headley. Me and Cyril, we just bought Dean Headley on a boxing day. We bought Dean Headley for a trial there once. I have total respect for this man who have us. And most importantly, cricket is a unifying force. And I've always exemplified that we need to keep the main 14 Caribbean islands together. And cricket has done that. And what Clive did, when Clive came along, Clive did away with the island politics, which was good, because I've always said to the young people, look, when the police is picking you up in the van, they're not saying this one is from Barbados, this one is from St. Vincent. They see all of you as black. Okay? So Clive gave us our pride, and that was quickly followed by my old friend Viv Richards, and so on. So the cricket is very, very important for the 6 million people in the Caribbean as well as us in the UK.
Yeah. Okay. Nicholas, was there anything you wanted to, because I know you've got an interest in cricket as well.
Sure. So Chris Gale and the West Indies team paid a special tribute to you in 2019 that went viral. How did you develop trust and such close relationships with the team?
I think it's just a natural thing, because if I go back a bit, I played youth cricket with Michael Holding. I wasn't his friend in Jamaica, but I played youth cricket the same period with him. And really what happened is it's a situation, something happened in 1992. There was a first-class cricketer called Richard Staple. He was playing in Marsh in Cambridgeshire. So I went to see this guy, and I decided to bring him over for dinner in Bedford. And he started to inquire about my wife's nationality. And I said, why? And he said, well, he hadn't eaten any Caribbean food for a long time. So anyway, we brought this guy to Bedford. He had his dinner. Then about a week after, he phoned me and he was speaking to my wife, Pamela. And this guy had a really, really bad cold. And I said to him, what's happening? And he told me he was sleeping in a caravan in the fields. So I took him out of the caravan, brought him back to Bedford for 3 weeks. When I returned to Jamaica, the chairman of the board at the time, I think was somebody called Shotgun Williams. And he sort of praised me for doing this. And that's where the work developed with the team. But the first person I met in the team was Malcolm Marshall in '79, and then Courtney Walsh in 1984. But what used to happen, youngsters used to come here, like Richard Staple, and they play league cricket, but they weren't treated very well. So I used to have to intervene in the Birmingham League, the Central Lancashire League, the Western League. And when I spoke to these guys, they didn't want their friends in the Caribbean, in the different islands, to know, that sometimes they weren't even being paid. So what I did was intervene. But when I intervened, I had a letterhead, and the letterhead said I was the chairman of the Victoria Mutual, and it says Courtney Walsh was the president. And I think that letterhead made a lot of difference sometime. But in those early days, it was really about looking after the young people that came here from April to September to play league cricket.
Yes, thanks for that. added to that, Chris Gale paid a great tribute to you. I mean, he said there are many great people in West Indies cricket, and this was at a function in 2019. Many great people in West Indies cricket, and here tonight we're with one of them. Thanks to Mr. Steve Stephenson, we know of the great cricketers who play on the field, but the world doesn't always get to see some of the great people who make their contribution off field. We want to again thank Steve for what he has done and will continue to do for cricketers, the game of cricket, and the people of the West Indies. I mean, how did you feel when Chris Gale, the great Chris Gale, I should say, the universal boss Chris Gale, when he said that about you at such a big function? How did you feel?
I was really surprised, but there's two reasons why that came about. Because before Chris got famous, he came to Worcester, and when he was leaving, he had some problem with his visa, and he went to a travel agent in Worcester. And I said, no, Chris, you have to go to the Strand in London to the Australian House. So what I did, I contacted the Jamaican embassy. I told them that we got one of the Jamaican nationals there, and they sought out a hotel for him. He went to the Strand. He got the visa. He was a bit nervous at the time, but I said, look, when the Australians see that you're a cricketer, they will give you the visa. And they give him the visa, and he went to Australia. But another thing was that in 1994, I went to the poorest club in Kingston, which was Lucas, and I gave them about £1,000 worth of gears. And Chris Gale was only 14 at the time, and I think he got one of the bats. But I'm not taking any credit for what he's done, but I think it's always really appreciated that when I told him that I came there in 1994 with all of this kit. And I discovered I also live just around the corner from him too.
Yes, but you know though, Steve, what's important about what you said is that when we make donations from the diaspora back to our country of origin, some of the most simple donations that can lead to the transformation. It can lead to that young person going out there to achieve their potential. So that's why all these donations are really important. And as we always say, and you're of the same mindset, you give without expecting anything in return. So what you get in return is when somebody can come to you and say that, you know, I was a beneficiary of whatever the donation was. So that's a great story.
Yes, let me just add to that.
Yeah.
Stephanie Taylor told me, I sent 50 more boots to Jamaica, and Stephanie Taylor, the captain of the West Indies, she said she got one of those boots when she was team that came here last year.
Yes.
I won't call the name, but 5 of those Jamaicans have benefited from my gears.
Exactly.
And today you are probably watching the 50-50 match in the Caribbean, and a boy was playing from Guyana. I also supported him, and that group of people are playing at the moment. At least 10 of them playing for the different islands. Barbados, Trinidad, a benefit from some of my ilk.
Yes, absolutely. Then our old friend Clayton Goodwin, you know, covered cricket for years across the Caribbean. This is what he said about you. In my several decades as a reporter of West Indies cricket in the UK and the Caribbean, I've known Steve Stephenson as a go-to man for help and information on every aspect of the game, from club to international level. His record on promoting charity games and events, awards, dinners, hands-on assistant to teams and individuals with an eye to the future and a mind on the past is exceptional. He is indispensable, Mr. West Indies Cricket UK, and that is just within my field of expertise. He has also achieved acclaim in other sports, mainly football, and in community relations and human rights, which we've touched on, for which you received your MBE. So you really have had quite an exciting time over the last 40 years, haven't you?
Okay. Yes, I think what has happened there, I think sometimes the Winston Davis benefit match, I start that because of Courtney was, and sometimes people come up to me and they said, are you from St. Vincent? So I said, no, I'm from Jamaica. But I said, I don't have to be from another Caribbean island to help one of my brothers from another island.
Yes.
So I always find that a bit, when they ask me that.
Yes.
So yes, Clayton, that's a great honor that he has paid me. But I understand where that's coming from. And people keep saying, I'm into Savannah Park, and they said the cricket different. And I said, why? Because they're in the nets, and when they come out of the net, everybody such as Shoot Mayan, Chanda Paul, Desmond Haynes, who's coaching them, all the players. So the guy says to me, how comes they treat you different?
Yeah.
And Chris Gale turned to the man and said, look, when we're in England, this is the man who look after us, okay? Full stop.
Yeah, yeah. So I heard a rumor about yourself and Kylie Minogue backstage. I mean, fill us in on that one.
I think I've been a bit lucky as a youth worker because while I was at the Starlight and I started coming to cricket with the police and so on,
yeah,
we had a young man called Venel John, who is now known as Venel King. And the story, I spoke to him this week. What happened? Venel was multi-talented. He could have played football and he could have played county cricket. He got a trial once with Northampton, and he actually clean bowled David Steele. David Steele was one of the anchor men that played for England, who professional cricketers just couldn't get out. But what happened, we went to Germany in 1978. We went as a Trinidadian person called Tony Ali invited us to play cricket in Germany. This was for the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Anglo Army in Germany. We took Venel there, and when we got there, the captain said, oh, you are the youth worker. Take all the young ones with you. We don't want them with us. So I went to this club called Charlottenburg. And when Venel started dancing, the German people stopped. And I just couldn't believe how good he was. So when we came back, I said to Venel, you should think about the dancing. So he won the regional disco dancing championship. He won the UK disco dancing championship. Then we went to Leicester Square for the World Championship, and he came second. I remember that quite well because we met Billy Ocean. He came second, but fortunately for him, one day he was in Pineapple Studios with Arlene Phillips, and he saw a young lady and she was struggling to dance, and he teach her to dance, and that was actually Kylie Minogue.
Okay.
So years after, they came to the NEC, and I phoned Venel, and they said he was on stage, and my wife said, oh, you're wasting your time because this guy's famous now, he doesn't remember you. Yeah. And lo and behold, Venel phoned me at 1 p.m. tonight, invite me down. I met Kylie Minogue. The first thing I said to her at the hotel, is he smoking or drinking? And she said, no. And I said, I don't smoke. And when we used to drink, Venel always said to us, we shouldn't drink so much after cricket matches. So that's how it went. And my daughters then met her at the time, and they were fans. And my wife met her backstage. So that's just one of them things that happened. I had Venel John in the club. I had the X Factor singers. One of the girls, her band was playing in the club. And I had Mitchell Thomas, who went on to play for Luton Town and Tottenham. I think it's just a bit of luck in that sense. But remember, the most important thing is education. And I also help a lot of people to get through university, especially on the social work courses.
Yes, and that's again great testament to your work in the community, very much behind the scenes. And you knew Cyril Regis, the late Cyril Regis, as well. You came across him in your work, didn't you?
Yes. Well, when I got to Birmingham, another coincidence. Paul Elliott, the former Luton Town player, arrived in Birmingham 6 months before me, and Paul was in the Albany Hotel on his own. So this invite, Paul came for dinner, and one day he came and he brought Mark Walters, who was living in the same area as us. Yeah. While we were doing that, I said to Paul that, at an event up here, and Ricky Hill came up, and Ricky, it was a fostering event. We were recruiting Black and Asian foster carers, and Ricky Hill came as a guest. He was like the fourth Black person to play for England at the time. But during this conversation, I met Cyril Regis at I can't remember where I met him, but I was talking to him and telling him about the work. And then Cyril started helping me, started coming to all the events. Then Cyril sort of confessed to me, and he said one of the reasons why he was helping me, he said he was also in care, in foster care, you know, when he was young, him and his brother David. So that's how the relationship started. And if it wasn't for Cyril, I wouldn't be able to have put on the groundbreaking tribute to the pioneers of Black British football.
Yes, yeah, excellent. So in 1998, you actually won the Voice newspaper award along with Neville Lawrence, who received the Community Award. How did you feel being in such, you know, again, great company and dedication?
That was a big surprise. The worst thing about that though was the parking at the Grove Star. I paid £17.50. That was like a king's ransom, but that was quite nice because Frank Bruno was there, and what's his name, Leonard Lewis.
Lennox, yes. Cool.
And but the highlight was actually meeting Neville Lawrence, and he received the community award, and I think I got the race relation award. But I was really interested because I was working at the time on the Macpherson report. Yeah. My job was to implement the 70 recommendations from the report. So it was a great honor. The only disappointment is that I met Baroness Lawrence years after in Jamaica. At the time of the incident, and during the time when I ended up going to one of the inquiries in Birmingham, where I met Lord Macpherson of Clooney. I was director of the Milton Keynes Race Equality Council when I went to that event, and it was very sad because the police was sitting on one side of all. The Black community was on the
sorry, Steve. We just missed the last couple of sentences there because your line went funny. Could you just repeat that?
No, and I was saying that when I was director at the Race Equality and Human Rights Service, the same year I went to the inquiry in Birmingham,
right,
which was put on by Maxie Hale,
yes,
who have done similar work as myself. Mm-hmm. I met Lord Macpherson of Clooney. But the sad thing about it, the police sat on one side of the hall, the community, most of Answorth, was on the other side, and there was a lot of shouting, and Neville broke down crying, and I remember we had to go over and comfort him. But what happened that day was that I was sitting at the front, and I was like on the television all day, and so people saw me, and they sort of recognized that I was involved. But the Macpherson report and the death of Steve Lawrence is one of the great sadness for me, and I'd like to make some comments about that later, because you mentioned something about equalities, and you were asking where do you think we are at the moment?
Yes, so that as we come down to our last few minutes, it's to look back in terms of, you know, over the 40 years, and then looking ahead with some of the things you feel, that some of the lessons learned and some ideas for the future. I'd be interested to get your insights around that.
Okay. Sorry, do you want me to continue?
Yes.
Well, basically, I'm really disappointed because we haven't made much progress. What really happened following the death of Steve Lawrence and the first report, Macpherson made 70 recommendations for the police and others to implement. I remember training the Bedfordshire police regarding the Macpherson report, and they were all polite. And I must admit, you know, I can't say they were very negative because some of my colleagues had some negative reception. But what happened is that the definition of institutional racism wasn't really accepted. I'm gonna try and quote the definition just on my head, okay, because it's very important. The definition said, institutional racism is a collective failure of an organization to provide an appropriate and professional service to people because of their color, and ethnic origin. It can be seen or detected through processes, attitude, and behavior which result in discrimination, unwitting prejudice, ignorance, thoughtlessness, and racial stereotyping, which disadvantages ethnic minority people. They just wouldn't accept the definition. The definition can be wide now to include the new Equality Act, which covers the 9 protected characteristics. But what really happened in local government is that most people didn't accept the definition, but hand in hand with the definition, Herman Woolsey, who was at the Commission for Racial Equality at the time, brought out the equality standards called Race Equality Means Quality. There is also Race Equality Means Business. And local authorities had a duty to promote race equality under the 2000 Act, and they had a duty to implement Race Equality Means Quality. But most local authorities got to level 1 where they produced the policy. Level 2 was making statement of intent. But as soon as they got to level 3, where you had action and implementation, they back away. And I was in a local authority as the only equality officer, 8,000 staff, 8 departments, fighting an endless battle. We had equality task group. People used to come to the groups, we'd give them action plans, they'd go away. The next meeting, another set of middle managers would come to the meeting. So you just couldn't make no progress at all. So I concluded after about 10 months that, you know, race was still a taboo subject. And some people didn't like it when I said it was a taboo subject, but I then said to them, but every time we talk about race, we get a 2-minute silence in the room. You could be in a room and you could talk about gender, disability, and the other forms of discrimination, and you would get a reaction. And as soon as you mention race, people didn't want to know, and it's still the same today. We haven't made much progress at all.
But from where things were, the level of accountability and holding to account, that's changed somewhat compared to what it was.
It's changed in some of the London boroughs. Yeah, where you got,
if we look generally,
managers.
Yeah, when you look at the kind of work that, and I was going to come to Lord Herman Huxley, when he was chair of the CRE and the whole Race Equality Amendment Act, and in fact he paid tribute to you in terms of your work. Again, it is a very difficult area, where he said that Steve has been involved professionally in community development, local government administration, policy development, social community activism for several decades. His wealth of considerable relevant experiences qualifies him to write expertly on these matters, and he's earned credibility and respect for unstinting, selfless, and dedicated work. So in a sense, it's recognizing how hard the journey is, but it's a journey that we all understand we can never give up on, because it's important for the transformation of people's lives. And he said about you as well, of most significant in recent time is the role adopted by Steve in providing support to others in leadership positions, using his wealth of experience to provide expert advice on decision-making matters, guiding victims of discrimination to secure just outcomes, and bring a role model for many vulnerable young people in deprived communities. So I guess what he's saying, that regardless of the situation, that people can't give up. That's the most telling message, with especially from somebody like Lord Herman Huxley and his experience in these matters.
No, we're not giving up. The reason why I made reference to those things, because I made a submission to the Ethnic Race Disparity Commission led by Tony Sewell on behalf of the Jamaican diaspora, because I'm a member of the Jamaican Diaspora National Board, and I made a submission to Tony Sewell. We're waiting on the report.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons. But also there's some other confidential work that I've been involved with. I've supported several England cricketers who are reporting to the ECB.
Yeah.
And I've also supported Paul Elliott with the work he's doing with the FA. But those are sort of confidential at the moment.
Yeah,
so
we don't want to mention anybody's names, but the point is that we can't give up, because there's a generation behind us who wants to learn from the experience and, you know, make their contribution. That's really important. So just coming down to the end then, Steve, in this incredible journey that you've had, what's been your greatest achievement? What do you feel has been your greatest achievement over these years?
I'm not sure. I think sending my two daughters, I told my two daughters that they had to do A-levels and do the degree. It wasn't negotiable. At the time, they didn't want to do it. And my daughter Simone, she has been suffering from breast cancer.
Yeah.
And would you believe, for the past 5 years, she's been doing a BTEC in sports management, and she's just actually finished it. So that's a major achievement. But I think one of my major achievements was freeing David Anthony Grant in Jamaica. David Anthony Grant was sentenced to a life term. What happened, he was running around with 3 older men. He was only 15 at the time. And they killed what we call a snowball man, what you'd say an ice cream man. But he was running with them. So at that time, I don't think they had the issue about joint enterprise, but he was detained at Her Majesty's pleasure for 18 years. And my old friend, Bernie Grant, intervened with no luck. Amnesty International intervened with no luck. And then one day I was speaking to Rudy Narayan, the Guyanese lawyer, with whom I have a respect for.
Yeah.
And Rudy says to me, tell the mom to give him £1,000 for his airfare and hotel, and he will go to Jamaica. It just happened that Rudy Narayan went to school with PJ Pattinson, and he got down there and he went to the prison. They said the boy was a model prisoner. And he said to PJ, if this boy is not freed in the next few weeks, we're going to go to the press. And spoke to George at the Gleaner, and George said, well, wait and see. Eventually he was freed. I got to Kingston. This guy, David Anthony Grant, went on his knees to kiss my shoes, kiss my boots. And I said, no. I said, stand up, you don't have to do that. And he said, well, I've been in prison for 18 years and you have freed me. So he got freed and he's in London now, living a good life. He's been in London, he has got into any trouble at all.
Yes, excellent. Excellent. So, Nicholas, is there anything that you'd like to ask before we come to the end of the program?
Not really a question. I'd just like to say that after reading about you and finding out more information about you, it's a shame that there's not more people in the world from all races that dedicate themselves to their local communities and support each other in a way that will go on for generations, because the people you help now could end up in bad situations, but through your work, they're never going to end up that way, and probably their children will never end up that way. So all I'd like to say to you is thank you for making a difference to this country that I live in, that I grew up in, because it might have been a slightly different place for me now at my age, trying to make my way in this world. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, thanks very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that individual. Carry on, sorry.
Sorry?
Carry on.
No, I just say one thing before you talk. Yes, I've been told that I've had a number of people, sportsmen, who have told me that they wish I was there. They've been in care, and they said to me they wish people like me was around at the time. But one thing I want to say, and the reason why I want to say it, is that there's some misconception about my involvement with the cricket, and people is also asking me about Courtney Walsh and Chris Gale. Just would like to say, right, that I was interviewed on the radio in Jamaica by Maurice Foster, the former Test cricketer, and he says to me, there's two cricketers, and I can mention the name because they give me permission. There's Clifton Folks, who played 3 matches for Jamaica, and he played for my team, Birmingham Cavaliers. Trevor Samuels, who played for West Indies under 19 under the captaincy of Brian Lara. And he says to me, these boys did not make it as professional cricketers. I was trying to explain about the racism in cricket at the time, but I then turned to him and said, yes, they didn't make it as cricketers, but they made it as men.
Yes.
And he said to me, explain. And I said, look, both Trevor and Clifton is not in the criminal justice system. They both got a house, they're both married, and they're both in gainful employment. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, they have made, and I just want to say that because there's, for every one cricketer that make it to the county teams or class or test, there's a lot more that I've done mentoring work with. And I just want people to know that, because there's always this constant thing about, the famous ones.
Yeah, of course. And that's in all sports, all competitive sports, as we know. Well, but not only that, in all the competitive endeavors of human existence, the ones that we see, even the ones that get awards, for everyone that gets awards, there's 100 who's probably done 10 times of whatever the person who's been given the award. So you're so right. We've had an inquiry in terms of your book. Do you know roughly when it'll be out and where they'll be able to purchase it? Are there any decisions around that yet?
Yeah, it's been published by Ansim Arif Ali, who used to run the Caribbean Times. Yeah. It will be published in April. I'm hoping to get it to Arif by the end of this month. But one problem with the book is that, not sort of like, wanting to big up myself. I didn't realize I'd done so much things. And every time I've, speak to people like Benel John, he's add a bit more to it. And then I speak to somebody else and they add a bit more to it. So it's been difficult. And then we had Black Lives Matters that come along, and people that's Black Lives Matters have slowed down the book, because everybody come in, Steve, you were right about race, you used to say things. But what I have to say about that is that people are speaking out now, but I have the utmost respect for people who spoke before.
Of course.
Like Lord Herman, who was late, and my friend Dr. Carver Anderson, who was working with offenders in Birmingham.
Yes.
And Ayana Griffiths from Bristol, and people like Bob Baker from Luton, and so on. But the Black Lives Matters have actually slowed down the publication of my book because I've been swamped.
Yes. Okay. In fact, there's a friend of mine, Dean Roden. He's in Connecticut, USA. Dean.
Yeah.
Just very quickly.
Yeah, quickly, I just want to thank you. I salute you. I've been involved in the scouting for over 30 years from Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm trying to write a book for thousands of years now. And I've done so many things, believe it or not. I've made, I don't know if you've ever heard the name, Kay Sullivan. She makes award and she makes trophies and plaques for like cricketers.
Okay.
I made a base for Brian Lara. I made like 150 of these bases for these great cricketers.
Okay.
Very simple. Before coming to Jamaica, so listening to you, I'm like, wow, sometimes you do things and you know who you do it for, but I've made thousands of bases for, and I know I've made for Brian Lara, Courtney Walsh, and all these great men.
Yes.
So the cricket, I was so involved, and I didn't even know, but listening to your story, you really inspired me, and I salute you and congratulations for the good work.
Thank you.
Yes, Steve. Steve, you'll be surprised when your book comes out, and we'll happily promote it, how many people will purchase the book. Because people, people do know and understand what you've done. But you know, with unsung heroes, they don't get that.
Well, I've never worked in London. I spent 20 years in Wiltshire. So
Yeah.
Herman Wesley feels that Herman feels that I haven't had the recognition I should have.
Yeah, of course.
Always like in the background.
Yes, and in fact, we've had a nice message from Karen Smith, who's on here. Again, thanking you for your dedication and what you've done all around for young people, and looking forward to the publication of your book. We all are. So thank you very much, and absolutely great work, Steve. And I'm going to give the last word to Nicholas to close us out before we leave.
So thank you very much for joining us and this project with Rudy. This has been a joy. This is my first time doing something like this, and this has been an absolute pleasure because I've got to meet an absolute saint and gentleman who has made such a significant difference. Whether you believe it or not, you may have worked just in Luton and those areas, but that grows throughout the country with every change that happens. Each council has probably taken on a lot of your work, and it's supported a lot of local communities. So I'd like to say thank you very much, and thank you very much for Rudy for putting this all together. And this is a really amazing initiative that I hope that I'll be part of again soon.
Thank you, and good night, everyone.